I am going to read 3 poems from the life of George Washington Carver. Carver was born enslaved in 1864. He was a near contemporary of Albert Einstein, who pronounced Carver a great scientist after Carver's death. Carver's career began as an attempt to understand why the soil of the South had been depleted. And he discovered that it was because of the years of growing cotton only. And he prescribed alternating crops, growing peanuts. And then Southern farmers had peanuts. They didn't know what to do with them. And Carver had to figure out how to use peanuts. So he came up with hundreds of uses for this crop, including things like gasoline and motor oil. And then he went on to do more inventions, mostly having to do with crops. During the First World War, Carver developed ways of dehydrating foods. I will just read the poems now. He was both a great scientist and a deeply religious man, and you'll see both of those things in these poems. This first poem is called The Wild Garden, dated 1916. The flowers of Cercis canadensis, ovate Philotaka decandra leaves, the serrate leaves of Taraxacum officinale, viola species and trifolium pratense flowers, a handful of tulip petals, a small chopped onion, a splash of vinegar, a little salt and pepper and oil, and voila! Would you like a second helping? The Creator makes nothing for which there is no use. There are choice wild vegetables which make fine foods. Lepidium species, a common dooryard pest, can be cooked up as greens. Cirsium vulgare stems, harvested with gloves and scissors in a roadside ditch and stripped of thorns, can be steamed, drizzled, and pulled through the teeth so the delicious heart oozes to the tongue. Oh, excuse me. If all crops perished, the race could survive on a balanced diet of wild vegetables, the homeliest, lowest, torn out by the roots, poisoned, the inferior, the weeds. They grow despite our will to kill them, despite our ignorance of what their use might be. We refuse to thank them, but they keep on coming back with the Creator's handwritten invitation. Another hemerocalis fritter? Try some of this potentilla tea. The dimensions of the Milky Way were discovered by Harlow Shapley in 1918, and this is called The Dimensions of the Milky Way. Behind the men's dorm at dusk on a late May evening, Carver lowers the paper and watches the light change. He tries to see Earth across a distance of 25,000 light years from the center of the Milky Way, a grain of pollen, a spore of galactic dust. He looks around, the shagbark, those swallows, the fireflies, that blasted mosquito, this beautiful world. 100 billion stars in a roughly spherical flattened disk with a radius of 100 light years. Imagine that. He catches a falling star. Well, Lord, this infinitesimal speck could fill the universe with praise. Carver called his lab at Tuskegee Institute God's Little Workshop, and that's the title of this poem. A hand-lettered sign above the room number on the closed door, "Do not disturb," written in the air. The professor had had another vision of an experiment he should try, a question he should ask. The creator's small, still voice asked, "What would happen if you made a resin of peanut oil and added a little bit of this nitric acid here, some of that sulfuric acid there, some alcohol, some camphor, a little of this, a little of that? Would the molecules form clusters tightly bonded into one plastic, which could then be shaped and molded?" A thin white silence issued from the door seams, settled on all who knew the door was closed again, made them walk softly, modulate their laughter, take themselves seriously. The creator asked, "What about elasticity? Is Ficus elastica the only plant on Earth whose sap is a latex? What about Asclepias syriaca? What about Ipomoea batatas? Coagulated and stabilized, vulcanized and compounded with an inert filler, would their sap become a half-solid, half-liquid which deforms under applied stress, yet after stretching recovers completely?" The professor took his eurekas on grueling medicine show lecture tours. He spoke softly, holding up his peanut axle grease, his peanut diesel fuel, his peanut gasoline, his peanut insecticide, his nitroglycerin, his plastics, his rubber, his sleeping compound, his iron tonic, his goiter treatment, his faith, his science, his miracles.